Well, thank you, Dr. Mollet, and thank you to the search committee for inviting me out here and giving me this opportunity to address you. And thank all of you for showing up and listening to what I have to say. And the very first thing I have to say to you is, don't panic. I don't believe in death by PowerPoint. Let's see if I can get this to work. What I intend to do is talk a little bit about what I see the role of an experiment station director, talk just a little bit about my experience, but I'm not going to recite my CV. That's on the web, and if you're really interested in that, I think you can go look at it. If you want to ask me questions, I'll be happy to fill you in, but I'm not going to take up a lot of time talking about that. I'll give you some examples of situations I've been involved in, how have I handled them, to give you some idea of my management and leadership style. Then we'll take a look at the challenges facing agriculture, shift gears, and see my view on what's going on out there. So the first thing, I've had a chance to think about what an experiment station director is involved with, what an experiment station director has to do. First thing, an experiment station director has to make sure things get done, and they get done on time in the right way. Also need to worry about money and people, which is the same as saying resource allocation. Do we have the right people doing the right things in the right places? Do we have the resources for them to accomplish what they need to accomplish? Experiment station director also has to be thinking longer term. The things we're doing today, the short term sorts of things, in the context of where we need to be 5 years out, 10 years out. Are we doing the right things now to build for the things we need to be doing in the future? Having that kind of vision, putting things in the proper context. We have to worry about telling our story to the people who fund us and the people to whom we are providing services. So that's the accountability reporting. That's relevance, quality, and performance, which is, are we doing the things that people need us to be doing? Are we doing the right things? Are we doing them well? Are we delivering them in a timely way, in a way that makes sense? And then last, of course, we have to be worrying about our stakeholders. And stakeholders, of course, are people that we work with, people who have an interest in what we're doing, legislators, members of Congress, our industry partners, consumer groups, state, federal, county agencies, whoever has an interest. We need to be talking with them, telling them what we're doing. That's part of the accountability reporting, and also getting their input as to what they feel is important for us to be doing to be advancing their interests. As you heard, I've been with the New Mexico State University Agriculture Experiment Station Administration for a while, and so I've had a chance to see a lot of things. What do I bring to you as a result of that? And how does that relate back to the roles of the experiment station director that I just put up there for you? I oversee all the off-campus agricultural science centers across the state. That means the personnel, the budget, repairs and maintenances, safety issues, things of that nature. I meet with the advisory panels every year to make sure that we're doing what they think we should be doing, that they understand what we have been accomplishing, and they know what difference we're making, what progress we're making toward those sorts of things. I have been the acting superintendent at several of these off-campus science centers at different times, either when the superintendents have been on sabbatic leave or when we've had an extended vacancy and somebody had to step in and make sure things were going. I've developed a close working relationship with the USDA, National Institutes for Food and Agriculture, chiefly with regards to a performance account and accountability issues. I'll give you an example of that in a few minutes. I oversee all the CRIS reports that are beloved of faculty. If it works with the CRIS system at New Mexico State University, you work with me. I am the chief cook and bottle washer when it comes to CRIS. I've also developed and I maintain an accountability database that stands alone that I use to mine information whenever we get requests from the governor, from the president of the university, from our staffers from congressional offices, stakeholder commodity groups, etc. I work closely with our Cooperative Extension Service colleagues to make sure I understand what they're doing so that I can help communicate that to the people outside, to the people of the state. I have to understand what they're doing because when I walk out, I'm representing the whole university, I'm representing the college. I need to know not only what are we doing in the research, but how are we delivering that so we have the complete package. I work across campus, I work with other institutions. I'll give you an example of some of that in a little bit, but I've always had an interdisciplinary approach to things. You heard that I have a zoology background, and I kind of came into agriculture from the side door, but that gives me a slightly different perspective. I also worked, if you looked at my resume, with a soft money engineering laboratory on campus, and so I have a very different view of how things come together, and I try to bring all these things together in an interdisciplinary type of way, looking for the opportunities that sometimes we don't always think about. As a result, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what a land-grant institution is about and what our mission is. Despite the picture, I really do not have a top-down administrative style. Those points go in all directions. They're equal opportunity. Actually, I refer to this as my facilitation aid to help us achieve consensus. What I'm going to do now is give you a few examples of some of the situations I've been involved with, how have I been involved with them, and you can decide how that shakes out. Currently, I am the acting superintendent at the Mora Forestry Research Center in northern New Mexico. The superintendent was killed at the beginning of June. Something like this, of course, is going to hurt morale at any unit. It's just inevitable. But it's much worse. It's exacerbated at a small station like Mora. It's where there's only one faculty researcher, and that's the superintendent, Dr. Harrington. So everything revolved around his research programs, his personality, his administrative style. And of course, in addition to the personal loss and shakeup that you have from the sudden death, there's immediately the worst case scenario questions come up. Are we going to keep the station open? Are we going to replace the superintendent? If so, when? What's the procedure going to be? Who's in charge? What about the research and the programs that are already in place? I went up to Mora, I met with the staff, let them know that I was going to be in charge as the administrative contact to help them, but I needed their help because Mora is nearly 400 miles away from the main campus, and there simply is no way that I can keep a hands-on, day-to-day operational view of what's going on. So we delegated responsibility for a lot of the day-to-day activities in either the work assignments or in the budgets to keep things going, then reporting back to me so I have an idea what's going on, and we keep that oversight going on. Also arranged so that we have one of our faculty from the Plant and Environmental Sciences Department on main campus be the technical advisor so that the research projects will be completed, the data will be collected in the proper way, the research will be written up and presented in the proper forum. I also contacted the national program leader at USDA for the McIntyre Stennis programs, Dr. Catalino Blanche, talked with him about the situation and made arrangements with his concurrence for keeping the McIntyre Stennis project in place while we're in the process of looking for a new superintendent. Because one of the things I did when I met with the staff is let them know, yes, the station is going to stay open. We are going to fill the position. We're doing it now. It should hit, and it should have already hit, but it should hit the pages here pretty soon. So if you know of anybody who might be looking, we'll be having a position open. Just a little heads up on that. So the key thing here is communication, listening, delegating authority. In 2004, I had the opportunity to go out to Washington, D.C. and work with the USDA to facilitate portfolio reviews where expert panels came in from the outside to look at animal production, plant production, and bio-based products to review their portfolio of extension, research, and teaching. The Office of Planning and Accountability at USDA had the responsibility for coordinating that, but they were swamped from Office Management and Budget, OMB, which is the 800-pound gorilla in Washington, D.C. They did not have the people to be able to handle that situation. I was asked to go out and help coordinate, facilitate that process. When I got out there, it was a tense situation. The then administration of the Planning and Accountability Group was not very communicative and somewhat imperious in the way they dealt with the national program leaders, who in turn responded by well, they didn't like it. Let's be honest about it. They felt they were out of the loop. They didn't know what was going on. So my walking in, was an interesting experience. The very first thing I had to do was establish my credibility and regain their trust. I told them I was not from the government. I really was here to help them. But actually what won them over was in the first meeting when I was talking with them and somebody asked a question and I said, I don't know. I'll find out. I'll get back to you. I did find out. I did get back to them. I found out later that the refreshing thing for them was the fact that somebody said, I don't know. For me, that's a no-brainer. I didn't know. And you may as well admit it up front. So we worked on that. I established that relationship. We built the teams that we needed to do. We got the data, we got the portfolios reviews taken care of, everything worked out just fine. As a result, I have a pretty good understanding of how USDA works from the inside. I understand a lot about the pressures that they have working with Office of Management and Budget. And I built relationships with the national program leaders that are good to this day. I can call them up on the telephone and they'll know who I am. And even better, they'll admit it. In 2009, our then interim president challenged New Mexico State University with the Year of Sustainability, and we had 12 goals that the university system was supposed to meet sustainability-related activities. I was the chair of the University Sustainability Council and was tasked with making sure these things happen. So I was pretty sure we could meet the goals because I helped the president write them. But also, we were able to do it because we worked groups across the campus who were not used to talking with each other. Facilities and services on main campus, student groups, faculty and staff from different colleges, the business office, health and safety, community, county agencies. We found that we had common goals. We established that everybody was there in good faith. We worked on those goals. We did not let things on the side cloud the issue. No philosophical harangues, no finger pointing. We worked on what we agreed we were going to work on. Delegated subtasks to some very capable people. My role at that point basically was a matter of facilitating, keeping things on track, reporting to the president, the Board of Regents, and also being the voice for the College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences to let folks know that our college, with all of our extended facilities across the state throughout the system, had to be part of the solution, that we could not be just pointing fingers at us. If you're going to work and make adjustments towards sustainable practices on campus, we were there. So that's what I consider part of my role. This was something that was important for me in a professional sense, although the proposal was not funded, and so ordinarily I wouldn't bring something like that up. But we put together a consortium of 5 universities, Texas A&M, Arizona State, University of Arizona, Colorado State, industry, national laboratories, to go after the algal biofuels in AFRI. Got pretty good marks, not quite good enough to get funded. We're going to go back. We've learned a few things from that. But I bring this up because of the effort it takes to coordinate one of these things. New Mexico State University was the lead institution, and I was the proposal principal investigator. So that meant I had the enviable task of working with these complex budgets, the resource allocation, the complaints about the resource allocations, the interesting personality disputes that occasionally arose, and understanding different systems, how you put together a consortium with these different universities. Also, I was involved early on with the, what we now call NAB. It's the, I get the name here, it's the National Alliance for Advanced Biofuels and Bioproducts, which was successfully funded by the Department of Energy. I was involved in the initial discussions where we put together the consortium with Texas A&M University, University of Arizona, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and others. So this has given me some experience for how you put together what are the big consortium, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, multi-institutional, multi-million dollar, multi-multi. The state of New Mexico was charged by our governor and our congressional delegation. They wanted to put together a plan for biofuels leadership. Where were we going to go? How could we foster this kind of industry? And I was asked to be a member of the steering committee and was co-chairing one of the work groups. And again, we worked with industry, national laboratories, other universities, tribal governments in New Mexico, environmental groups, individual citizens, trying to work out the various problems, the different ways we go about things like this. And this was reported then to the governor, was released in May 2010. It's on the web if you're interested in looking at it. But it's a chance to work again with diverse groups, listen to what they have to say, facilitate the process, come to conclusions. New Mexico State University is a minority serving institution. It's a Hispanic serving institution. It's one of only 2 1862 land grants that is a Hispanic serving institution at the main campus. The other one is through University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. So we are aware of the various programs, various issues that are surrounding minority students. I had the chance to be a Hispanic serving institution fellow at USDA, where I learned a lot about what programs USDA has available to institutions on minorities of various kinds. And although we do not have any 1890 land grant institutions in New Mexico, we do have 1994 tribal land grant universities that in New Mexico. And we're quite sensitive to the different clientele and different aspirations and cultural differences as we try to build those partnerships with them for research and extension. So this is what I think is going on here. A listener, I am inclusive. I am not a micromanager. I don't like being micromanaged, and I don't want to do that to anybody else. Communication is very important to me, but communication is two ways. I communicate with people. I expect to have communication coming back to me because it's not going to work any other way. Building relationships is important because that's the way I build teams. And teams are the way I go about attacking complex problems. I think you're much better at getting solutions if you have teams with a clear charge and good boundaries. Keeping on task is important, and I do this by asking two questions all the time. What are we trying to accomplish? Is this going to help? Always putting it through that prism, through that lens. And then looking at what's going to happen, what are the implications if we do one thing or another. I like a systems approach. It's just the way I was built in ecology. If things don't work out, what can we take from that? What can we build on that? And then anybody who's in a leadership position, department head on up, you know that the only way you can really make progress is you've got to get your satisfaction from helping others to succeed. If you cannot do that, you're probably not in the right place. The role that I see is helping others to do what they need to do, providing them with the tools they need to do what they need to do, not telling them how to do it. So, switching gears and talking a little bit about agriculture and the particular challenges we're facing, we all know it's the economy, stupid. Well, you can drop the stupid off. It's the economy. I've learned that University of Arkansas has a flat budget and that you're all mighty happy to have it. I can tell you from another institution's point of view, a flat budget looks pretty good. Merging areas of research. I've had a chance to talk a little bit about that earlier. I think that we have to keep our eyes open for what's going on out there. Genetics, genomics, the GMO sorts of things, water and water-related, and quantity and quality. We have biofuels and various things that are going on from the federal level. Keeping our eyes open for what's out there. What are the implications for industry and the state? The kinds of research we have to do. Being aware for what the impact is likely to be. Need to keep working on support from our legislature, from the Congress, our various stakeholders, which means we have to tell them what we're doing and what difference we're making for them. To do that, we have to be working very closely with our cooperative extension service colleagues because they're part of that message to be able to tell them what difference are we making in these people's lives. I think everybody's pretty much aware of the fact that urban and rural interface is an important thing. In the nation, the rural population is decreasing in most states. I see in the latest census that's true for Arkansas, and it's certainly true in New Mexico. The urban-rural interface has a lot of issues that are associated with it. As we build developments that go into what was formerly farmland or wooded areas, of course you start using resources, not only the land, but the water, energy. You start putting pressure on wildlife. You begin to get pest issues that way. Then you have cultural issues, people who have different lifestyle expectations in a rural environment versus an urban environment. And you have people who move out to the rural area for the atmosphere and then find out that sometimes the atmosphere has odors. Who knew? So you get a perception issue. You have calls for regulations. And so one of the challenges we have here is helping to mediate so we find the appropriate environmental regulations and helping the public perception understand what's necessary, what's appropriate, what's not. Lastly, sustainability. I, of course, was part of the Sustainability Council at New Mexico State University. Sustainability right there. Sustainability has a variety of different meanings. The meaning we use at New Mexico State University is the Brundtland Commission's definition from the UN. Meeting our needs today in a way that will not prevent future generations from meeting their needs. Or when you boil that down, I like to say, living like there is a tomorrow. While also understanding that in agricultural production, in agricultural business, the focus is often short-term. You could actually put agricultural sustainability by saying, making enough profit this year to survive to put in a crop next year. So there's a short-term focus there. If you don't make it there, you're not going to stay in business. Short-term needs the conflict with the longer-term context that we have to be putting things into, and that's one of the other issues that we're looking at that we have to keep in mind. I'm not going to go over the NIFA priorities. I think you're all aware of them. Most people can probably find themselves somewhere. The only thing I'll say is there's a bit of a tension between the states and the federal level as to what they should be dictating and what we should be responding to. My approach, as much as is possible, whenever appropriate, we should try to work together, play well together, go to legislature, go to Congress with a common message. We should get our ducks in order because I think we're more effective if we do this. It's not always possible. It may not always be desirable. But I think as much as we can get together with our industry partners, with the consumer groups that we work with agencies, whoever it is that's involved, I think it's heard better and will likely be more effective that way. This does not mean we all have to be in lockstep, but I think it's more effective if we can coordinate what we're doing. And of course we know that the opportunities for competitive research favor multi-institutional, multidisciplinary types of efforts. So we need to be always looking for our partners. And I know that you're already doing that, so this is just an emphasis on that point. Building the national teams wherever it's appropriate so we can go after these national opportunities in biofuels or whatever else is coming down the pike. For me, communication is key to everything that's going on here. We need to be communicating with the people who pay us. We need to let them know what they're getting for their money. And it is, after all, their money. It's not our money. We need to be telling them how we are advancing and meeting their needs. We're not advancing, meeting their needs. We also have to be talking that we're part of a continuum that generates and delivers the knowledge, the science-based knowledge. And to do that, we have to have our cooperative extension service colleagues as an integral part of this. And I'll mention that in just a moment. We need to be reminding the public all the time of the benefits of investing in agricultural research. It's easy to talk about the economic multiplier effects. It's also important to talk about the importance of capacity funding. Capacity funding is the sort of funding that allows us to have the infrastructure in place to be able to deal with emergency situations if there's a pest outbreak, to deal with the sorts of situations where we have minor crops or things that do not attract, situations that do not attract large competitive funding, that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to respond to competitive fundings when those opportunities come up. That's the kind of thing that we need to be in place. We need to be talking to people and explaining why it is we need things like Hatch funds, McIntyre Stennis funds, Smith-Lever 3B and C funds. The last thing here is we need to be always telling people about the role of this university and our colleagues. What are we doing to make a difference? What are we doing to support the agriculture? In the land grant system, we're very good about telling how important agriculture is to the state's economy, to the nation's economy. We do not always do a good job as a state, as a system, in telling them what difference we at the university are making. That piece doesn't always get across, and we need to be working on that all the time. If the university disappeared, the agriculture experiment station stopped working, would anybody notice it? I think they probably would, but would they notice it before it happened? We need to be telling the story. We have to get out there and remind people what difference we make, how we work in that system. We are not good culturally at beating our chest and telling our stories and bragging on ourselves, but we have to do it. If we don't blow our own horn, nobody else is going to do it for us. At New Mexico State University, we have what we call the 3D continuum, which is to say the discovery of knowledge, the development of knowledge, and the delivery of knowledge. It's a continuum. It's not a break. It's not like you do one thing, he does something else, and I do something different. Which is to say, this is also known as fundamental research, applied research, then extension and outreach activities. Everybody is supporting the clientele, which of course are the students on campus and the people in the state. Any one faculty member might find him or herself anywhere in that continuum in the life of a project. For example, a plant breeder might be working on transferring genes in the fundamental research phase. Might be doing field trials later on in the applied phase. then handing that information off to your extension colleagues or meeting with producers in field days or teaching graduate students or classes. What this helps to underscore is the importance of research, both the fundamental research and the applied research, in supporting the delivery of knowledge, both in the traditional setting in a classroom and a non-traditional setting with extension agents and technology transfer. Now, the general challenges are we're going to have a lot of people by mid-century, at least 9 billion, and it might be before the mid-century. They're going to need to eat. We're going to have to provide food somehow, and they're going to put a huge demand on the natural resource base. Land, of course, water, energy, air quality, immense opportunities for strife between nations. If we're going to respond, we need to be integrated in the way we do that. I can call it portfolio, you can call it any number of things, but it cannot simply be one discipline or this discipline. I think you have to have an integrated approach to go at that. We need to be talking about supporting conventional agriculture, support organic agriculture. We need to support the GMO agriculture technologies. We're not in the business of picking the winners and losers. Society will make those decisions, or the economic aspects, the marketplace will help make those decisions. But we're here to provide the unbiased, science-based information that will allow society to make an informed decision. But while we're doing that, we need to keep an eye open for intellectual property, make sure we protect the investment by researchers and investment by the university in providing resources. We know funding is down. Funding for agricultural research is a big issue, partly because, well, we've been so successful. It's sort of our own fault in a way. Everybody assumes we're going to have enough food. I mean, when was the last time we had a serious food shortage in the United States of America? So it's fallen off the radar screen. In this room, we know that we're going to have to increase our productivity, but we're going to have to do it with less resources, less water, less land. A farmer today, I was reading last week, in the United States supports 134 people. By mid-century, that same farmer is expected to have to provide food for about 500 people. How are we going to do that? We in this room also realize that weather is increasingly variable. How are we going to be able to do that? Huge challenge. One of the biggest challenges I think we've been facing ever. This should be a national security issue. It needs to be at that level. We may need to focus our research. The question is, do we need to be doing everything that we're doing now? How do we choose? When do we partner with other institutions? When do we partner with industry? When do we decide to do one thing and not another? I think you have to do that in two ways. Discussion within the university, between the faculty, to find out what the priorities are from the faculty's point of view, and then dealing with our stakeholders, the industry partners, the consumer groups, the state agencies, for example, to find out how they see things, how we can work those things out together. We also need to keep in mind that there's increased funding from non-agricultural sources. USDA is not getting any more money right now. So where are we going for money? NSF, NIH. We have a lot of ways of framing our issues in ways that we can get money from other sources. We do need to keep an eye open, though, for how this is going to affect our research priorities. Are we going to have a drift? Or are we going to be able to keep focusing on what we're doing now? So that's something we need to keep an eye open for. Basically, I think we're going to be working with partnerships with our industry and stakeholders. The key point here, I think, is we need to get out the word, this is the time to be investing in agricultural research. This is a national security issue. If it is, despite the economy, we need to be investing now if we're going to have any prayer of meeting the challenges of having 9 billion people plus. The biggest challenge an experiment station director is going to face, in my view, is allocating resources between the short-term and the long-term research. What do you have to do today? Keeping an eye on what you need to be doing 5 years, 10 years out, and making the difficult decisions sometime between what you have to do now to be sure that you're building the stage for what you need to be doing, or what you're pretty sure you need to be doing in the future. Dr. Catherine Wotecki, the chief scientist of the REE mission area at USDA, has said this is an exciting time to be in agricultural research, and I believe she's true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. This is great. I agree with them. To be a graduate student now with the technologies that are available, the things we can do, the information we can come up with is astonishing. I can't, if I was a graduate student, it would just be, the opportunities are almost endless. But that's a good thing. We need those technologies because we're facing these serious challenges, and we're never going to have a chance to get at it any other way. University of Arkansas has a tradition of leadership, and it's exciting to talk to you about the opportunity to build on the tradition you already have, to work to augment the strengths you already have by bringing more resources so that you can hire the people you need, you can have the equipment you need to tackle these projects that are going to be necessary to feed the people. So, basically with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Yes, sir. The question was the accountability database that I mentioned, to have a little bit more information about what that is. The standalone database that I put together is where we gathered the information from the Agricultural Experiment Station research, the Cooperative Extension Service programs and our plans of work, and tying that in with the academic research or academic class work that people were doing. So we would go to an individual person. They would have the listing of their research activities. We would classify it in a variety of different ways. We would talk about the progress that they had in the years, what impacts, real or potential, that they were expecting or did in fact achieve, what were the latest products, either whether they're publications or software or whatever they was appropriate. And we were able to cross-list that by county, region of the state, congressional district. So when the questions would come in, we would be able to focus in on and by subject area and various keywords. So we'd be able to quickly find out what's going on in animal science, in Lee County, in all those kinds of different identifiers to satisfy a congressional staffer's inquiry, for example. Or if people want to know, what are we doing in such and such an area, or what extension projects do we have, or what research are we doing, that kind of thing. The nice thing about that from my point of view is that it gives me a really good idea of what's happening inside the college. And that's important because, the administration gets a lot of questions. What are you doing in this, that, or the other thing? You need to know. And it's good to know how that fits together with the cooperative extension delivery to people. The question has to do with, at New Mexico, we have a lot of research with UAVs. That's the uninhabited aerial vehicles that we have, unmanned aerial vehicles. And what does that have to do with agriculture? Is there implications that could be for this area as well? The short answer is yes. The UAVs, there's a lot of research going on. Of course, we have multiple uses for it in New Mexico. There's, of course, border surveillance, which is a big issue for us since we're only 50 miles away from the Mexican border. And there's, issues going on with that. But we are also using the remote sensing aspects for sensing pest outbreaks and stress situations on our agricultural fields. We're doing that now. And I see that as a huge opportunity to be able to move that out of just an area like New Mexico across the country. The neat thing about New Mexico and why the testing is going on in New Mexico is we got lots of space. We got lots of space that's not a problem for air traffic. So we can do a lot of this testing there. But once we have that in place and we know these things work for surveillance in the sense of pest outbreak, stress from drought, whatever the situation is, I think you can easily transfer that around the country and use that for very fast analysis of large areas where it's difficult to get in and do the testing on foot. Forests, for example. In the College of Agricultural and Consumer Science, the question, by the way, was about the relationship with Ag Experiment Station and academic programs, basically. We have, almost all the people in our academic departments have joint appointments between academic programs and Agricultural Experiment Station. The average appointment is 60-40 Experiment Station academics, but of course that varies between, 95-5 to, all over the map. It really turns out that Agricultural Experiment Station helps to subsidize the academic programs to a large extent. I don't believe that's unusual for land-grant universities. We have a very close working relationship between the two branches. The difference is we do not have a separate division of agriculture and then the academic college working up through the provost structure at the university. For us at New Mexico State University, the college reports to the provost. The dean has then 3 associate deans who are the directors of the Cooperative Extension Service, the Agricultural Experiment Station, and academic programs. So we work very closely together because we're all in the same structure. We don't have to kind of cross back and forth. Well, really, there's not very much problem. The only difficult problem comes is trying to convince people sometimes that we do not get enough of the instruction and general budget that the rest of the university gets, because to help us with advising, to help us with the administrative cost that a department has to do for academics, because they assume, and up to this point they've been correct, that the Agricultural Experiment Station will pick up the bill. So that's, but otherwise, there's really no difficulties that I'm aware of. You know. So the question has to do with basically how do we decide where to put new positions when there's the opportunity, assuming we ever have the opportunity again. It works at several levels. For one thing, we ask each of the departments to decide where they need to be going in the future, where they will put their priorities for the positions that they want to fill, and write a justification for that, saying we think we need to go in the direction of having an urban entomologist, and this is the reason why it's so important to have it. We will have all the departments come together, and we will have the department heads kind of help sort through what are the pluses and minuses, the strengths of this position versus that position. Then we will get the input from our stakeholder groups, the commodity groups or the consumer groups, and ask them for their importance, how they would prioritize some of these things. Then basically it comes down to sorting out with the, so to say, the college cabinet, the director of the Experiment Station, Cooperative Extension Service, and academic programs, with the dean in our case, with the department heads, and sort of coming to the conclusion that we have X amount of money, this is our highest priority. You all agree that we're going to go for this one first, this one second, and that's where we start filling in that order. But we do that by, first of all, the departments justifying why they want this, then this, then this in their order, and then we do department get together and help to prioritize between those to say, okay, we in Department A agree that Department B should have the first crack at it, but we want to be the second one. Once we come to that agreement, then we put forward to the provost and say, this is the order that we want to fill. We have a chance for 2 positions, these are the 2 we want. And we let people know that when the next one comes open, this is the way we're going to move down the line. Unless, of course, there's an emergency that we have to fill. Example, the Mora superintendent is an emergency we need to fill, and so that one was approved right away. On the other hand, that's a whole 100% AES position, so the provost was much easier about granting, didn't have any ING, instructor in general, to worry about. So it's our money, go ahead and fill it. So we're in the process of getting that taken care of. But had that been somebody on campus that was crucial to a degree program, for example, in animal science, a few years ago we had a number of retirements, and the doctoral degree was in danger of not being able to continue. So that got people's attention, so that priority came up the list. But that was an emergency situation. It was unexpected. Ordinarily what we try to do is prioritize it, so we kind of have an orderly progression of what we want to do. Generally, I'm in favor of tenure track. I understand that there's times when you have to go one way or another because of financial exigencies, but basically, I think the tenure track position is the better way to go for research positions. We get into some positions at another university, New Mexico Tech. Those are, at that place we call them soft money positions, and I don't ever want to get into that position where people are thought of as a second class situation. I would prefer to have everybody on equal footing. And I think the best way to do that is probably to do tenure track. What are we going to look like? Yeah, I have to say, because I'm going to be very wrinkled. The question is, what are we going to be, 2050 is not far out, and what are we going to look like? Yes. In the United States? Land grant institution. This one in particular. Okay, the one I know least about, probably. If we're successful, and we haven't destroyed ourselves fighting, we are going to be working on a lot of sustainable types of activities, I believe. So we're going to be working on, I believe, a lot of things that involve recycling, efficient use of water resources, efficient use of our land resources, and air quality and quantity. We're going to have to be efficient about energy. I believe we'll be using more alternative energy cycles, systems. I do not believe we'll be using ethanol from corn. That's a personal opinion. I think we'll be using more alternatives from oilseed crops, and at least in the Southwest, I do think there's a real chance for algae. It'll have to be. The price will make it work where it doesn't work now. In terms of food crops, I think we're going to be working on ways that we're going to have crops that are going to be a lot more efficient in the use of water. I think water is really the key point here. We'll have to use a lot more precision agriculture to help us decide where, when, and how to make applications either of fertilizers, pesticides, whatever it is that's necessary. We'll be using more like UAV, some remote sensing to help us tell early on with the detection of pest outbreaks or stress situations, so we're able to make those decisions. I think we'll have a lot more modeling going on, a lot more quick response to that sort of thing. You know, that's the cheerful future I see right now. But at that point, I personally, and if I'm still here, and I'm still compos mentis, I don't know. We'll see. I'll be interested to look around. Yes, sir. The University of Arkansas is a place where there's a lot going on. I mean, even in New Mexico, we hear about the University of Arkansas. That's a joke. You've got a lot of good programs going on here. This is an interesting place to be involved with it. And you're in a place where you make a big difference in agriculture generally and to the state. And I've told some folks earlier today that one of the things that really attracts me to a job, well, what I do at New Mexico State, for example, is I'm able to make a difference. I enjoy being in an area where we are mission-oriented and we're working on things that have a practical payoff. We really can make a difference in people's lives, in the industry, whatever it is. That happens in colleges of agriculture and agricultural experiment stations and cooperative extension services and all the land grants. So, you know, that's at New Mexico State University and our college, also here. The opportunity here is to kind of work with the really great structure you've got in place to make sure you continue to move forward. You know, I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff right. You're doing it really well. This is an opportunity for me personally to in a working system and help continue to make a difference. Because that's what floats my boat at the bottom of the day. So did I mix metaphors enough for you? Okay, the question is, how do social sciences fit into the experiment station mission? In my viewpoint, I see no problem whatsoever, because I look at it from the environmental, the economic, and the social aspects of what things are doing. I tell you, I have an interdisciplinary type of approach to things, and that's the way we have to do it. In sustainability, that's the way I approach it. Agriculture, the National Academy of Sciences defines agriculture as a very broad definition, basically plate to gate and all the social implications that fall out from that. So family and youth development, nutrition, well-being, food science, safety, technology, all those things to me are part and parcel of raising, processing, and delivering the agricultural either food or fiber products. So the cultural aspects to me are just, you have to have that to see the whole picture. In New Mexico State University, the name of our college used to be the College of Agriculture and Home Economics. Now that was an old-fashioned name, but the new name also reflects that: agricultural, consumer, and environmental sciences. And we have a Department of Family and Consumer Sciences, which has food safety, technology, youth development, nutrition, in addition to apparel and fashion. We have a hotel, restaurant, tourism, and management school. Again, the processing and the cultural aspects, not merely the economic and food safety aspects. So for me, of course it's important. To me, how could you not have it? It's the way I look at it.